Hi everybody, I'm Elena, qualified nutritionist and fitness professional. Today I would like to talk to you about the reasons why people gain weight, how to lose weight the healthy way, and how to keep it off as well. If we look at people even 30 years ago, the average person was a lot slimmer in those days. So what has changed for us? It's things like what we eat, how much we move, how much we eat, and also how we live our lives, how much toxins we consume. Those are all contributors to the weight gain. Also, the stress levels we're under are increased a lot since those days. So if we look at the food that we eat, of course, this is the main contributor in the weight gain we see around us. So never in the history of human beings we've consumed so many carbohydrates as we do now. So for example, what does average person have for breakfast nowadays? It's mainly bread, cereal, things like that. So pancakes, it's a lot of carbohydrates. So we know that bread's popular because if we go to supermarkets, there is the whole aisle devoted to this, to bread, all sorts of varieties we can choose from. Also cereal, if we go to supermarket, there is all sorts of variety of cereal, so we know it is popular. So why do people go for these options for breakfast, for example? Because unfortunately, a lot of people, they stay up late, they go to bed late, they wake up too late, and then they're in a hurry to get out of the door to go to work. So nobody has time to sit down and have proper breakfast. So they just get cereal and eat it within 10 minutes and they're out of the door. So toast, the same, it's very easy option, but all of those are just carbohydrates. So there's no other nutrients that we have with our breakfast, no protein, no fiber, no vegetables, no fruit. So people have also a lot of pasta, rice, potatoes, and the most popular ingredient in all of the products is sugar nowadays. So let's have a look at what happens when we actually eat. So when we consume food, especially carbohydrates, the food turns into glucose. So glucose then absorbs into the blood, and the aim is for that glucose to get into the cells and give us energy. That is the main point of eating for the human beings. So we're eating to get energy. So our brain works, our muscle work, our organ work, they all need glucose to function. So essentially every cell in our body is running because of glucose. So let's have a look at how glucose gets into the cells. So glucose gets into the cells with the help of hormone called insulin. So insulin is like a key that unlocks the door to get the glucose into the cell. So with the help of insulin, glucose is absorbed by the cells of our body and then is used as energy by the body. So when blood glucose levels rise after we had meal, insulin is then released by the pancreas into the blood to open the door as such for glucose to get inside the cells, and that way we'll get the energy. So cells will get the energy that they need. So technically everybody should be feeling energized after the meal and throughout the day. But why is it that many of us, after the meal, we feel tired? A lot of people need a snack after, in about an hour after eating a full meal to keep the energy going throughout the day. So I used to be one of those people. I used to always snack throughout the day to keep my energy levels going. I just even remember at my job that I used to work, we didn't have permission to eat whilst we're working, so we could only eat at lunchtimes. And I actually made a complaint because I was really feeling faint if I don't constantly graze on something. And in those days I thought that everybody felt like that, and it was kind of normal. So everybody need constant food to keep them going and to keep the energy levels up. But obviously I was mistaken. It is not normal to feel like that. And now I only have 2 or 3 meals a day at most, with no snacking, and that's quite enough for me. I've got enough energy to go through to work and do everything I need to do throughout the day. So we don't need the snacks if we're healthy enough and our processes work as it should. But so why was that happening to me? Why is that happening to many of us like that? Why do we need constant snacks to keep the energy going, or drinks, caffeinated drinks, for example? So what happens is when people eat a lot of carbohydrates and have lots of snacks throughout the day, our cells become insulin resistant. So what is insulin resistance? So when I was talking about this mechanism that insulin opens the door, is the key for the glucose to go into the cells. So when we bombard our body with carbohydrates, when the sugar levels go up all the time, because carbohydrates cause that, when we eat carbohydrates, our sugar levels go up all the time. So, or if we eat any food, really, the sugar levels will go up in a certain extent. So it is best to stick with just 3 meals a day, or even 2 for some people. So when we bombard the insulin with all these, the cells with all this insulin that rises because we have all these constant snacks or a lot of carbohydrates, this mechanism that allows insulin to get in the glucose into the cell becomes broken. So that key that we talked about that opens the cell to get the glucose in, that key doesn't fit the lock anymore, and glucose can't get into the cell. So muscles, the fat and liver cells don't respond properly to insulin, and therefore they cannot easily absorb the glucose from our bloodstream. So we don't get that energy. Our cells do not get that energy. So they don't absorb glucose after a meal. We don't get energized, even though we've just had a big meal, for example. So why does it happen? So basically, imagine an unwanted salesperson that you get calling you all the time on your phone. You'll answer the phone call once, twice, 3 times, but after a while you'll get annoyed and you will stop responding to that salesperson. So the same happens with insulin and cells. So the insulin comes knocking on the door on the cell. It keeps opening all the time by having snacks and high sugar foods. So the cell gets fed up with it. It feds up with insulin knocking on the door all the time, and because it does need to be left alone. So that lock becomes rusty, the key becomes rusty, and that process stops working properly. Because we're just rising that insulin all the time because of the high sugar foods and snacking. So where would that glucose from our carbohydrates and snacks go if the cells don't open the door to get the energy in? So some of it will be stored as in the muscles as a glycogen. So glycogen is the store that our body can access to get the energy even when we're not having the food, for example. So for example, if we get up in the morning and go to the gym without having breakfast, we'll have enough energy because of the glycogen stores in the muscles. So some of it will go to glycogen, but the main part of that glucose will be stored as fat, because fat cells, they're the only cells that will take glucose without the need of insulin. So they will be calling for that glucose. Come on in, join us. They'll be quite happy taking that glucose in and store it as fat. So the excess glucose that cannot get into the cells for energy, it will be going straight into our fat cells and will be stored there. So when we've got no energy from food, and our glucose will be stored mainly as fat. This is why people with insulin resistance crave something sweet at the end of their meal, because the sugar is the only, so high sugar foods, that's the only they kind of bombard the cell to open then, because there's so much insulin comes with the high sugar foods. They'll just force the cells to open, and with huge amount of insulin. So that's the only way that we will kind of get the energy in after. So we won't be feeling energized with normal meal. It's just the sugar that will give us that, which it causes the breakage of that mechanism even more. So cells, you'll need more and more sugar to get that energy levels up. So so after a meal we have no energy. So what does that mean? We will crave another snack an hour later, and then another snack, just to keep it going. And ideally it will be a sugary snack to get that glucose into the cells to get the energy levels up. So let's have a look at the symptoms of insulin resistance. So insulin resistance sometimes can have no symptoms at all. So people will not know, and for several years without, and they can live without knowing it. But when it becomes severe, the insulin resistance signs can be darker skin in places such as under your knees, elbows, knuckles, armpits, on your face sometimes. So I had darker skin under my arms, so all of a sudden it just appeared to be really darker patches under my arms. Also pigmentation above my lip and on my nose. So this is also a sign of detoxification problems, as well as the insulin resistance. So also weight gain, unexplained weight gain. This is often happens because of insulin resistance. So waistline over 40 inches for men, so this is around 1 meter, and over 35 inches for women is about 90 centimeters. That is a sign of insulin resistance. So another sign is increased hunger. So because we can't get the energy from food easily, we just want to eat all the time. Another sign is skin tags, so small skin growth that can appear everywhere, anywhere on the body really. It can be on the neck, on the eyelids, armpits, groin. So that could be anywhere on the body really. That is a sign of insulin resistance. Also dry skin on the feet is another sign. So for example, cracked heels is a really common sign of insulin resistance. Also headaches, so people with high blood sugar levels may experience some headaches. So how can you be tested? Yes, you can. You can request the insulin resistance test. You can also test for fasting blood glucose test can be also showing high glucose in your blood, which can be already a sign of insulin. But sometimes you can even have a normal sugar levels, and if you don't get the insulin test, then you won't know necessarily that you are insulin resistant. But if you've got the signs, then you don't need a test. You'll know that that's what it is. You just to let you know, so the high insulin levels are the sign of insulin resistance, but also a sign of pre-diabetes. So insulin resistance in itself is pre-diabetes. So it's not an easy condition, but you can easily get rid of it. So if you stick with the I will talk about more what to do, but you can correct insulin resistance with as little as short a period as 1 month, and it's very easily done. I've seen it again and again. I've seen it on myself. It is not a hard thing to do, but you'd have to stick with certain things that I'll talk about. So what can we do to get the insulin resistance under control? So mainly is giving up the high carbohydrates, high glycemic foods. So things like bread, cakes, cereal, white rice, white potatoes, and anything that contains added sugar. So avoid sugary drinks, avoid soft drinks, fruit drinks, iced tea, for example, energy drinks, drinks that contain the sucrose. So the sugar can come under all sorts of names, but it's all basically sugar. So fructose, corn syrup, fruit juices from concentrates, and other artificial sweeteners should be really avoided as well, because they do also rise that insulin levels. So also be careful with having too many fruit in your diet if you've got insulin resistance. So it's best to have berries in moderation, and if you haven't fruit, then it should be no more than 2 fruit per day, 2 pieces of large fruit per day. Because some people think it's healthy to have fruit all the time, and it is very full of nutrients and vitamins, but for people with insulin resistance, it will be similar to having sugar as well. So don't overdo it with the fruit. So I used to think that I was healthy by not having much sugar but switching it to fruit. So I used to have lots of dried fruit, figs for example. I used to eat lots of figs, dates, but this is just absolutely full of sugar. Sometimes it will be even worse than having just the cake, for example, having lots of dried fruit. So berries would be the best option, because they are less sugary fruit. So instead of having sweetened beverages, stick with water or herbal teas. So don't replace it with tea or coffee, because tea and coffee, they also rise your insulin levels, so they're not a good option. So drink plenty of water. You should be drinking around 2 liters per day. So how you would calculate it? So 30 milliliters of water per every kilogram of your body weight. So for example, if I weigh 60 kilo, I should be drinking 1,800 milliliters, so 1.8 liter of water per day. So what about carbohydrates? So slow carbohydrates from vegetables, whole grains and legumes should take priority. So you should be eating a lot of fiber in your diet. So things like sprouts, legumes, beans, flax seeds, chia seeds, avocados. So high fiber food should take priority. Also quinoa is really good to regulate insulin resistance. So load your plate with fresh vegetables as often as possible. So every plate should contain lots of fresh vegetables for you. They're high in fiber, they're low in calories, and they will contain lots of vitamins and minerals with anti-inflammatory properties as well. So slow carbohydrates, so they will release the energy slow, so they will not raise your sugar level very high, so they will be not as much insulin released into the blood, so the cells will eventually stop being resistant to insulin. So another thing is to eat lots of healthy fats. So they are low glycemic foods. So for example, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds. Also, people with insulin resistance, they should also increase foods that contain omega-3 fatty acids. So this is the oily fish. So for example, wild caught fish, you should be having at least 2 servings per week, really. So salmon is a good option. Also mackerels, herring, tuna, whitefish, they all will contain the omega-3 foods, as well as walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, egg yolks, coconuts, coconut oil, things like that. So fat is important also because we need fat for our brain to be functioning, because brain is 70% fat and brain loves fat, so we definitely need fat. So also the main thing to pay attention to is getting enough protein. So this is one of the most important aspects of our diet. So we don't normally consume enough protein. Protein is important for all of our processes. It is building muscles. it needed for any organ in our body and any process in our body. So also, if we do get more muscle because of consuming a lot of protein, we will burn fat more. So the muscle, if the more muscles we get, the more it will kind of get rid of fat as well. So metabolism becomes quicker as well. So we burn that fat quicker. So protein, things like chicken, wild-caught fish, free-range eggs, lentils, nuts, they all will help regulate your blood sugar levels and insulin resistance. So you need to consume at least 1 gram of protein per each kilo of your body weight per day. So for example, if I weigh 60 kilos, I need to consume at least 90 grams of protein per day. So to put it in perspective, 100 grams of chicken breast will only contain 30 grams of protein. So technically, if I'm eating chicken breast all day, then I'll need 3 chicken breasts per day to have my protein levels covered. It is in your diet, it is best to avoid dairy because most people cannot digest dairy well because they haven't got enough digestive enzymes for that. So what would the plate look like? So half the plate should be vegetables or salad, so cooked vegetables or salad. Quarter of the plate can be carbohydrates, slow carbohydrates such as quinoa, buckwheat, brown rice, millet, things like that. And then another quarter of the plate should contain protein. So your chicken, your fish, eggs, things like that, or lentils, beans if you've got vegetarian option. And it also is important to have a little bit of fat on your every meal. So that could be olive oil, avocado, nuts, or butter. So not margarine or refined oils like vegetables oils. They're really bad for us because they've got trans fats that actually been manipulated. They've been manipulated on high temperatures and they are harmful to our health. So finger size of fat with every meal, or about 1 tablespoon of fat with every meal should be definitely on your plate. So it doesn't matter whether it's your lunch, breakfast or dinner, your plate should always have those components. So your plate should always have those components that I've just talked about. So it shouldn't be your cereal or your just piece of toast and things like that. Another tip I was going to mention, if you are insulin resistant, having vegetables or salad before you have anything else, even slow release carbohydrates, it will act as a cushion and it will lower your glucose that you've got in the food. So it is best to eat the vegetables first and then move on to your protein, fat, and then carbohydrates. Carbohydrates you'd have the last, and that will protect you from having a big sugar level spike. Also, so I've touched on that, how often should we eat? So it shouldn't be any more than 3 times a day. So we shouldn't have any snacks. So 2-3 times a day. No tea or coffee break. So if you are having a tea break, it should be really just a herbal tea that will not rise your insulin levels. So because our stomach needs a rest to digest the food, so we need at least a 3-4 hours break between the food to get the digestion right. So after digesting the food for about 3 hours, then the stomach will need a rest for about 1 hour. So ideal time to leave between the meals is 4 hours at least. Next thing I was going to talk about is supplementation, because it is also important, because often we have cravings because we are deficient in vitamins and minerals. So So cravings for sugar, for example, it could be due to lack of vitamins in our bodies. Bad microbiome in our gut is another reason. So that would be bad bacteria, fungus, parasites. They're all often due to bad diets, antibiotics usage, and also stress. So the sugar cravings we often have due to the bad bacteria, they are thriving on sugar, so they demand sugar. So it's not that you want the sugary snack, it's that your parasites, bad bacteria, they are demanding sugar. So they are kind of ruling the world for us. They are making you want sugary snacks and stuff like that. So person with healthy microbiome would not crave sugar after a meal, especially. And the last couple of things that I wanted to talk about is also exercise. So exercise is important because it's not just burn calories, so it will help you lose weight, but it also lowers our sugar blood levels. So if that's why after a meal, after a big meal, it's good to go for a walk straight away, because it is proven that your blood sugar levels will go down quicker if you move after a meal. So go for a walk, or just have a little dance party in your kitchen after a meal. So whatever you need to get moving. Also, exercise is important for all of our processes in our body, particularly for lymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing out the toxins, bad bacteria, fungus, and parasites, and other harmful substances from our body. And the last component I wanted to talk about is reducing stress levels is important, because if you not getting plenty of sleep, if you are stressed, if you're chronically stressed especially, your blood sugar levels will be raised all the time. Exactly the same thing as if you would be eating constantly. So you need to get your stress under control. Again, in my program Healthy Body, I talk about the methods of reducing that stress, what you need to do, and how to improve on it. Also, sleep is very important. So because whilst we sleep, the growth hormone is produced. So the growth hormone is responsible for the growth in children, but in the adults, this hormone is responsible for our metabolism. So it regenerates new cells. It basically burns out fat and helps us get rid of the calories. So this hormone, growth hormone, it only activates between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. and it only works well if we are asleep between those times. So make sure that you're in a deep sleep between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. To make sure that the growth hormone works well for you. So that's why the time when we go to sleep is important. So don't leave it until too late at night. So that's all I wanted to say today. If you have any questions at all, just message me directly. I'll be happy to answer all of the questions. And have a great day, everybody.